There are days that seem ordinary in their garments, days that walk quietly past us in the market of time, unannounced and uncelebrated. Yet, beneath their modest coat lies a key, a hinge upon which destiny swings. October 12 is such a day. Not a monument, not a festival. Not a date that shouts from the calendar, but a whisper that waits to be heard by those who have the ears of faith. For every soul there comes a moment, not wrapped in gold or crowned in trumpets, but veiled in simplicity, when the lock of one's life meets the key of divine timing. It is not the thunder that announces it, but the quiet nudge of something eternal saying, "No." We walk through the corridors of our days carrying keys we do not yet understand. Keys forged by past pain, by endurance, by unseen obedience. They hang silently at our side, clinking softly as we move through our routines. And then, suddenly, the day arrives when one key fits. The door opens, not by accident, but by orchestration. October 12 may appear as one among many, but to the heart tuned toward heaven, it is the day when alignment occurs, when unseen promises take shape, when that which was long delayed finally breathes. It is not the world that declares such a day important, but the whisper within you that knows something has shifted. You may wake with the same sun, walk the same streets, drink the same water, but the air carries a fragrance of fulfillment, and the silence holds a hum of victory. The key turns quietly. The universe itself seems to pause, watching a soul awaken to its purpose. There is no crown, no ceremony, yet a door opens in eternity. The great paradox of this moment is that it often comes disguised as the familiar. The holy often hides in the common, the extraordinary is wrapped in the ordinary, and the infinite passes through the humble threshold of the mundane. When such a day dawns, it is not luck that stands before you but legacy. It is the fruit of long seasons of waiting, of choosing right when it would have been easier to drift, of holding fast when the night felt endless. The key does not appear out of nowhere. It is shaped by your patience, carved by your tears, refined by your perseverance. The waiting that once seemed barren becomes the forge that formed the instrument of your unlocking. October 12 is not simply a day marked on a clock. It is a convergence of divine preparation and human endurance. Think not that victory arrives with noise. True victory is often quiet, a shift within before it ever becomes a sight without. The world teaches us to celebrate the opening, but heaven rejoices over the forging. It was not when you entered the room that your triumph began. It was when you refused to quit polishing the key in the dark. Every "not yet" you endured was heaven's way of saying, "Keep shaping it, your time is coming." And when that time finally comes, the door yields easily. Not because it is weak, but because the key is now perfect. There are souls who live their whole lives turning the wrong keys into the wrong doors, chasing recognition, pleasure, and applause. They force locks that were never theirs to open and grow bitter when nothing yields. But those who walk in faith learn to wait until the right lock finds them. They understand that purpose is not something you seize. It is something that unveils itself when you are ready. October 12 belongs to such hearts. It is the quiet coronation of readiness. The key has been in your hand all along. Today, it fits. And what happens when that door opens? The world remains the same, yet everything changes. The light that floods in is not from outside, but from within. The purpose that had been stirring under the surface of your soul finally takes breath. The things that once confused you begin to make sense. The pieces that never seemed to fit align like constellations after a long night. You realize that nothing was wasted. Not the pain, not the waiting, not the silence. All were tutors preparing you for this unlocking. It is a humbling thing to discover that your moment was not delayed, but designed. The detours were not diversions, they were lessons written in invisible ink. You see now that the hand that seemed to withhold was in fact the hand that was protecting. The closed doors were not rejection, they were preservation. You could not have opened this door until the key was ready, and you could not have forged the key until you had been refined. Such is the mercy of divine timing. It does not give you the gift until you are strong enough to bear its weight. October 12 is not a number on a page. It is a revelation in motion. It speaks to the soul that has waited faithfully, saying, "Your season of unlocking is here." But it also whispers to the weary who still stand before unopened gates, "Your day will come too." For every life, there is a date when heaven's schedule intersects earth's patience. No effort is lost, no tear uncounted. The very things you thought were slowing you down were in truth aligning you perfectly for the moment that is now. The key does not shout when it turns, it simply fulfills its purpose. So too will you. You will stand one day on the other side of the threshold, not realizing at first that you have crossed it. And when you look back, you will understand that the key was never about opening a door to fame or comfort. It was about opening the door to yourself. You have been the lock and the key all along, and this day, October 12, is the meeting of the two halves of your purpose. The air will not crack with thunder, but peace will settle upon your heart like a seal. That peace is the sound of alignment, the music of destiny finding its chord. The waiting ends not with noise, but with stillness. You will feel it in your bones. A sense that what was meant for you has finally arrived, that the long winter of delay has given way to the first warmth of realization. This is the essence of divine timing, quiet, perfect, unhurried. October 12, then, is not just your victory. It is the echo of every patient choice, every small faith, every whispered prayer that seemed unheard, but was being woven into this very moment. And though the world may not notice, heaven does. The gates of your purpose open softly, and you walk through not as a conqueror who fought his way in, but as a pilgrim who waited his way home. There is a strange and holy dignity in waiting. It is not the waiting of apathy, nor the waiting of despair, but the waiting of a soul that knows the clock of heaven runs by different hands. The triumph of those who wait is not measured by how quickly the door opens, but by how steadfastly the heart remains when nothing moves. For in a world intoxicated with haste, patience is rebellion, and stillness is strength. Waiting is not a pause, it is participation in the unseen work of grace. It is the silent chamber where faith matures, where courage finds its root, and where character is tempered like iron in a slow, sacred fire. There are those who mistake waiting for weakness, as if the one who pauses has lost his way. But the one who waits in trust stands closer to victory than the one who rushes in impulse. To wait is to believe that the promise has a pulse even when you cannot feel it. It is to look into the distance and whisper, "I know something is coming," even though I cannot see it. Waiting is the crucible where hope is purified from its childish impatience into the refined gold of conviction. It teaches the soul the discipline of surrender, not resignation, but the posture that says, "Not my time, but the right time." The triumph of those who wait lies not in the speed of arrival, but in the depth of endurance. For every promise worth holding must first test the hand that holds it. The earth waits for spring beneath the frost. The seed waits in silence before breaking open. The dawn waits behind the night before spilling light upon the hills. So too must the heart wait, trusting that delay does not mean denial. The divine rhythm is not disorder, it is deliberate. The pause between sowing and reaping is not emptiness, it is formation. The unseen work of waiting is the hidden music of preparation, played softly in the chambers of the soul. There are moments when the waiting feels like abandonment, when the silence grows so heavy it threatens to crush the spirit. It is then that faith must remember that silence is not absence. The artist is quiet when he is still shaping the masterpiece. The composer is silent when arranging the final note. The one who called you to the path has not forgotten your name. The waiting room is not a place of neglect, it is a place of design. What feels like stillness on your side is movement on his. What appears delayed to you is timed perfectly in the architecture of eternity. Those who have learned to wait do not merely endure, they grow in secret. The roots of an oak do not cry out as they stretch deeper into the soil. They simply anchor themselves for the storm. In the same way, every season of waiting deepens the foundation of your faith, anchoring it in patience rather than emotion. The shallow heart seeks instant bloom. The wise heart seeks enduring fruit. Waiting transforms your desires until what you once demanded becomes what you now discern. It purifies your vision so that when the door opens, you no longer run toward illusion but toward purpose. The triumph of those who wait is not loud. It is quiet and glorious in its restraint. It is seen in the one who chooses peace instead of panic, prayer instead of protest, trust instead of torment. The world may not applaud such victories, but heaven crowns them with unseen laurel. Waiting is worship in motion. It declares that time itself serves a higher will. To wait well is to proclaim that not every delay is a defeat, that some pauses are sacred intervals in the symphony of destiny. In the quiet corridors of patience, something extraordinary happens. You begin to see differently. You begin to perceive that waiting is not an obstacle between you and your goal. It is the path itself. You realize that what you are becoming while you wait is just as important as what you are waiting for. For no great thing can be entrusted to a hurried heart. The vessel must be shaped before it can carry the treasure. The waiting, then, is not punishment. It is preparation. The delay is not divine neglect but divine care, ensuring that what arrives will not destroy you by arriving too soon. There are countless souls who stumbled not because they lacked strength, but because they demanded speed. They tore the fruit before it ripened, built the tower before laying the foundation, claimed crowns they were not yet ready to bear. The triumph of those who wait is that they understand timing is mercy. They trust that if something is withheld, it is for their good. They do not grasp, they receive. They do not rush, they rest. Their strength is not found in movement but in restraint, not in striving but in stillness. Look upon the lives of those who have endured, and you will see the pattern written in every generation. Every great calling was once a long silence. Every promise was once a patient prayer. The shepherd waited in obscurity before becoming a king. The wanderer waited in the desert before entering the promise. The heart that waits rightly is never truly idle. It listens, it learns, it leans closer to the whisper that says, "Not yet, but soon." Waiting is not emptiness, it is expectancy. It is the seedling pushing unseen toward light, trusting the soil though it cannot yet feel the sun. There is triumph in that kind of waiting, because it births peace where others find panic. The one who waits well is not broken by delay, but beautified by it. Patience polishes the soul, removes the dust of impulsiveness, and replaces it with quiet authority. The one who emerges from waiting walks differently, more grounded, more gracious, more aware that every good thing must be grown, not grabbed. They no longer crave speed, they crave substance. They have tasted the slow wisdom of heaven and will never again be fooled by the glitter of haste. When the day of fulfillment finally arrives, it comes not as a surprise, but as a harmony. The soul that has waited knows the sound of its promise approaching. It recognizes the fragrance of its long-prayed answer. And when the waiting ends, there is no need to shout, for peace has already declared victory long before the door opened. The triumph was not in the outcome but in the process, because the one who waited has already won within. The waiting taught them to trust, to yield, to see through eternal eyes. To wait is to dwell in a paradox, still, yet moving, silent, yet singing, unseen, yet growing. It is to stand in the tension between promise and fulfillment, and to call that place holy. The triumph of those who wait is not that they reach their goal faster, but that they reach it wiser, deeper, truer. The storms they endured in stillness become their crown. The silence they embraced becomes their song. And when at last they step into their destiny, they do not boast of their strength. They bow in gratitude, knowing that the waiting was the winning all along. Obedience is one of the most misunderstood virtues in all of human experience. The world has trained us to equate victory with visibility, triumph with applause, success with noise. Yet the greatest victories in the soul are often won in silence, in the hidden chambers of the heart where only you and the eternal listen. The quiet victory behind obedience is not the thunder of public approval, but the soft, steady pulse of peace that follows a surrendered will. It is the strength that comes when you lay down your right to understand, your desire to control, your craving to be seen, and choose instead to trust. True obedience is never about the greatness of the command, it is about the greatness of the one who commands. There is a subtle majesty in obedience. It asks for no spectacle, no reward, no recognition. It does not argue with the moment, nor demand an explanation for every mystery. Obedience simply says, yes, when every emotion cries no. It is the art of bowing without breaking, of bending without losing dignity. To obey when the path is clear is easy. To obey when the road disappears into shadow is divine. The quiet victory behind obedience is not in the act itself, but in what the act reveals. That faith has matured, that trust has grown teeth. That love has reached the point where it no longer bargains with God, but simply follows Him. There are many who would rather achieve than obey, who would rather move than wait, who would rather speak than listen. But obedience is the language of heaven. It is how the finite converses with the infinite. It is how a soul says, I will walk even if I do not see. The triumph of obedience is that it reclaims the ground that pride once stole. Every act of surrender repairs a fracture in the soul, where self once ruled. To obey is to return home from the exile of independence, to stand once again under the light of purpose instead of the shadow of willfulness. The victory of obedience is quiet, because it does not need to prove itself. You will not find it flashing across the headlines or trending in the noise of ambition. It is found in the one who forgives instead of retaliates, in the one who stays faithful when the feeling has died, in the one who gives when it costs something, and in the one who chooses truth when lies would be easier. It is in the simple act of doing what is right even when no one sees, even when no one claps, even when no one understands. That is where heaven leans close and whispers, well done. Obedience is the soil where miracles grow. It may look like nothing more than dust at first, but beneath it lies the root of every breakthrough. The greatest doors open not to those who knock loudest, but to those who obey longest. The quiet victory of obedience is that it builds trust layer by layer, teaching the heart that blessings are not seized. They are bestowed. You do not chase them. They follow you. You do not need to force your future. You only need to be faithful where you stand. The path of obedience is narrow, yes, but it leads to wide places of peace. The world measures progress by movement, but heaven measures it by alignment. You can travel far in rebellion and never move an inch toward purpose, but one small step in obedience can realign your entire destiny. The quiet victory of obedience lies in its unseen power. It shifts the soul's orbit back toward the divine center. Every yes you whisper in secret is a seed that will one day grow into visible joy. Every no you say to temptation is a hammer that strengthens your foundation. The victory is not loud because it does not need to be. It is self-evident to those who have learned to listen to the language of peace. Obedience has always been a form of courage. It is easy to submit when the outcome is clear. It is bravery to obey when the result is hidden. To walk in obedience is to walk on water while the storm still rages, trusting that the one who called you will not let you sink. The world calls this foolishness, but heaven calls it faith. The quiet victory of obedience is not that it avoids fear, but that it outlasts it. It keeps moving forward, even trembling, because love has made the heart stronger than fear. The beauty of obedience is that it refines the heart until the will and the divine are no longer at odds. There comes a moment when obedience stops feeling like duty and starts feeling like delight. When surrender no longer stings but sings. This is the victory that few notice but all heaven celebrates. It is the quiet transformation of a heart that once wrestled with trust now finding rest in it. The loud victories of the world fade. The quiet victories of obedience echo into eternity. Obedience is not a chain, it is a key. It does not imprison you, it frees you. To obey the right voice is to walk out of confusion and into clarity. The loud promises of rebellion always end in chains, but the quiet steps of obedience lead to peace. The victory behind obedience is the freedom that follows it. Once you have obeyed through tears, through waiting, through misunderstanding, you will discover that obedience was never meant to take something from you. It was meant to prepare you for something greater. Every great story in human history began with an act of obedience that seemed small at the time. The builder who laid one faithful stone, the traveler who took one unseen step, the prophet who spoke one unpopular truth, the mother who prayed one more prayer. None of them knew that their yes would ripple across centuries. That is the mystery of obedience. It multiplies quietly. Its echoes reach places your feet never will. You may think you are simply following a whisper, but heaven is building a symphony through your surrender. The quiet victory behind obedience is also a victory over self. There is no louder enemy than the voice of pride that says, "I know better." Each time you choose obedience, you silence that voice a little more. You reclaim the throne of your heart from the tyranny of ego and give it back to the one who made it. It is a paradox of the soul that submission leads to strength, that yielding produces power. To obey is not to become less, it is to become whole. And though the obedient are often mocked by those who mistake stillness for weakness, their peace betrays their strength. For they carry a serenity that no noise can disturb. They are not swayed by outcomes, for they no longer serve results, they serve truth. Their joy does not depend on doors opening, but on knowing they are walking in the right direction. The victory of obedience is internal long before it is external. It is a state of harmony between the soul and its source. There will always come a moment when obedience feels costly. When saying yes means walking away from what you love, what you planned, or what you thought you deserved. It is in that moment that obedience reveals its hidden crown. For what feels like loss is the making of strength. And what feels like surrender is the beginning of sovereignty. The one who has learned to obey in pain has already conquered the world's greatest illusion. The belief that freedom means doing whatever you wish. True freedom is found in doing what is right, even when it costs everything. The quiet victory behind obedience does not parade itself. It does not demand witnesses. It simply lives, breathes, and moves with a grace that cannot be faked. It is the peace that settles when you know you have done what was required of you, even if no one applauds. It is the smile that flickers across your soul when you realize that trust is its own reward. It is the steady rhythm of a heart that has stopped fighting its maker and started walking with him. When all the noise fades, when the applause dies, when the world's victories turn to dust, obedience will remain. It is the eternal rhythm of creation itself. The harmony between will and wisdom, between choice and calling. The quiet victory behind obedience is the song of that harmony, sung not in words but in life. It is the hidden triumph of every soul that chooses to bow rather than break, to listen rather than argue, to follow rather than flee. It is the victory that needs no crown, for the peace it brings is crown enough.